Kevin Thomas, Senior Pastor at Forest Lake United Methodist. Let's talk about Acts chapter 17, verses 22 through 31. Then Paul stood in front of the Areopagus and said, "Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with the inscription, 'To an unknown God.' What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all nations to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live, so that they would each search for God and perhaps grope for him and find him, though indeed he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we too are his offspring. Since we are God's offspring, we ought not to think that the deity is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of mortals. While God has overlooked the times of human ignorance, now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will have the world judged in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead." I love this passage. Without reservation, Paul walked into pagan temples and looked carefully at their objects of worship. Sometimes the church spends too much time and energy erecting walls to protect us from outside influence. In our efforts to remain pure, we reject the other. Different opinions threaten us. Questions terrify us because we know our pat answers won't satisfy. Paul went beyond our walls. He sought out those who don't believe our story. He took time to learn from them, time to discover what was important to them. He cared enough to learn their language. When he spoke, he talked in terms they could understand. He didn't try to explain Christianity in terms of Solomon's temple and the Jewish sacrificial system. He didn't call Jesus the lamb that was slain or talk about his blood. Those images worked for Jewish audiences. They would have just confused the Greeks. So Paul used their own words. Your own poets have said, for we too are his offspring. Paul loved them enough to go to them, respect their traditions, learn their language, and tell our story in a way they could understand. Now more than ever, we need to learn from Paul. We need to become more aware of our Christian lingo. The way we use words like repent, grace, justification, salvation, and even blood sometimes confuse more than helps. Most Americans aren't coming to our churches. Our lingo and our slogans are lost on them. So let's love our community enough to go to them. Let's learn what's important to them. Let's learn their language. Let's invite and even encourage their questions, even when we don't have any answers. Let's love those who don't believe our story enough to invite them into our communities, or maybe even go into theirs.